Three bombings in Afghan capital. 2 killed. Kabul, Afghanistan. U-3 explosions struck the Afghan capital on Sunday, killing at least 2 people and injuring 24 others, officials said. At least 2 The first bomb was attached to a bus carrying university students. It was followed. Wahidullah Mir, spokesman for the Public Health Ministry, said 24 other people, including 4 women, were injured in the attacks. At least 7 people were wounded by the 2 roadside bombs after arrived at the scene, located in a residential area of western Kabul, including 5 members of the security forces, Rahimi said. Also wounded in Sunday's attacks were at least 2 Afghan journalists, Ahmed Jad Kargar and Mohammad Faisal Mutawakil, according to NIE, a media organization that supports open media in Afghanistan. Kargar, a photographer for the European Press Photo Agency, confirmed he was injured by a secondary explosion in a video he posted to social media while being taken to the hospital. EPA did not. NIE said the second journalist had been lightly wounded. The Islamic State group claimed responsibility for Sunday's attacks in Kabul. In a statement, both Taliban and Islamic State militants are active in the capital and have staged attacks in Kabul. In April 2018, 9 journalists were killed and half a dozen wounded in a double suicide bombing in Afghanistan's capital. In that attack, in a separate attack late Saturday in eastern Ghazni province, a Taliban suicide bomber was able to enter a police compound using a stolen Humvee packed with explosives. The blast killed at Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid took responsibility for the attack in Ghazni. In western Farah province, at least 6 members of the border security forces were killed Saturday night in an attack on their checkpoint by Taliban insurgents. Abdul Samad, the Afghan capital has witnessed a wave of attacks in recent days. On Friday, attacks by the Taliban have continued unabated despite peace talks with the United States as well as a fresh round of talks with Afghan notables last week in the Russian capital, Moscow. The Taliban have rejected repeated demands for a ceasefire, saying the fighting will continue until US and NATO troops withdraw from Afghanistan.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.